Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second webinar in a series of 4 webinars on bilingual dual language education. The topic of today's webinar is Foundations of Dual Language Education. Next week, we'll do a repeat of the one that we did last week, but this time we're going to do it in English for dual language educators who do not speak Spanish but serve in a Spanish-English dual language program. And that's going to be fostering Spanish language and literacy development. And then in 2 weeks, we are going to finish it with CAL SIOP for dual language programs. Our presenter today, which you've been hearing from before I started, is Lisa Tabacu. Lisa serves as Director of Global Languages and Cultures Education at the Center for Applied Linguistics, CAL, where she provides technical assistance, both professional development and program evaluations, to multilingual and dual language programs in the US and abroad. At CAL and at the American Institutes for Research, where she was before she came to CAL, Lisa developed educational materials and provided professional development on effective and culturally responsive literacy and content instruction for students learning in a second language. Over the course of her career, she has directly taught English learners in grades pre-K through 12th grade. Lisa served in a variety of public school roles in the US. These roles included Director of Civil Rights and Multicultural Affairs, Executive Director of the Office of Bilingual Education, Assistant Principal of a Spanish-English dual language elementary school, Professional Developer, Grant Writer, Curriculum Writer, Federal Grants Coordinator, and Bilingual and ESL Teacher. Lisa is a co-author of the Department of Education Office of English Language Acquisition 2015 report entitled Dual Language Education Programs, Current State Policies and Practices. So that's all I've got. So Lisa, you are on.
Okay, thank you so much, Igone. And again, thank you to everyone from across the country and around the world who is joining us for this very important topic, Foundations of Dual Language Education. I know that these webinars, or I feel that these webinars, these free webinars from CAL, are really about hope. Right now we're at home, most of us, right? But we are going to be returning to our classrooms, and the information like this about dual language education, about providing information to teachers, educators, administrators, about valuing our students' languages, about their cultures, about their identities, is going to be invaluable when we return and when we're providing our virtual instruction. So without further ado, I'd like to start the webinar, letting you know that this will be an overview of dual language education. I don't know, I haven't done a needs assessment for those of you who are participating today, so I don't know what your level of understanding is. So there's going to be some very fundamental information that some of you may already know, but I am also going to include quite a bit of the research so that we know, well, when we're creating our programs, what should we be thinking about from the perspective of what we know through research about the most effective programming and instruction for dual language. But a couple of housekeeping details first. We recommend that you use your computer audio. It's been found to be often the most reliable. Your microphone will be muted. We have more than 500 people with us today, so we won't be able to handle having you all on microphones, but you will be able to interact in the question box. As it says here, the question box is in your panel on the right side, and both Igone and Maria, who I'll introduce in a second, will be working very hard to respond to as many comments as we can, and there will be a question period at the end of the webinar. There will be polls. When there's a poll, there will be this symbol for a poll. And please don't use the full screen mode if you want to participate in the poll. Okay, so just so that you can see our faces, even though we're not live, you know, after all, I'm still in my pajamas. I'm only kidding. Igone Artea-Goitia has introduced me, and Igone did a wonderful webinar last week on Spanish language and literacy instruction, and she's going to do one again next Tuesday. There's myself in the middle, and then on the right side you see Maria Cheslek, who is going to help us with questions. She's a Cal PD specialist too. Okay, so Center for Applied Linguistics, who are we? Well, we're a private, nonprofit, non-governmental organization that's been around for 60 years. We have an international reputation when it comes to all things language, identity, and culture. We do these many things that you see on the screen. Of course, I'm biased, so I put dual language and bilingual education at the top of the list. But we are here, our mission is to promote language, learning, and cultural understanding, especially as they relate to access and equity in education and society around the world. Okay. Now, what's our goal today? What are our objectives? Well, we are, I'm going to put this aside a little bit, thanks. All right, we are going to be looking at the basic principles underlying successful bilingual programs. So by the end of this webinar, we're going to be able to describe, hopefully you will be able to describe the research-based benefits of dual language education and how using what has come to be sort of the Bible of dual language education, the Guiding Principles, 3rd edition, can help you to develop or improve your programs so that you are ensuring for your students bilingualism, biliteracy, high academic achievement, and sociocultural competence. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now to get us started and get you involved, we know that there are many, many benefits of being bilingual or being bilingual or being multilingual. So can you please enter one benefit that you see of being bilingual or multilingual in the question box? And we'll see what people have to say. All righty, more neural pathways in the brain can communicate globally. You can become open-minded, have 2 different repertoires of language to be able to use. You become a good problem solver. You can communicate with many more people. It validates your identity. You have more job opportunities. You can better support your students. You can become bicultural. You can become a stronger global citizen. You can delay Alzheimer's. I'm counting on that. Trains the brain to keep it healthy. You can teach what you really need to students who speak those languages. Wow, you are more valuable. Mercedes, thank you. My goodness, fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Validates your mother tongue. All right, so keep putting those in and we're going to continue, and Igone and Maria are also posting some of these for you all to see. Okay, so let's look at from the research. What are the benefits of bilingualism or multilingualism? What does the research say? Well, there are benefits for all students, right? If you are in a two-way program, students are learning in the partner language, uh, students are learning in the non-partner language or English. Students in these programs have found to be more likely than their peers. They're learning in both languages. They're more likely than their peers in general education programs to complete high school, to take advanced placement courses, to have positive attitudes about school, about being bilingual. They have a greater understanding and appreciation of other cultures. Also for all students, as many of you said, they benefit cognitively. There are numerous studies that have shown the cognitive benefits associated with being bilingual. Students also develop proficiency in more than one language, find that they enhance their career opportunities, it promotes cross-cultural understanding, and it improves communication skills. You said it, and it's also validated by research. Benefits for English learners. Uh, Research shows, okay, if we look at the English learners that are in the program, they absolutely benefit from continuing to learn in their native language. The oral proficiency and literacy in a student's first language helps facilitate English literacy development. And Ls are much less likely to fall behind in core subject areas if they're able to continue learning grade level content in their home language. Now, a more recent study, this is a 2019 study that came out by researchers at Harvard and the University of Delaware. They did a longer-term study of students and found that stronger early Spanish reading in kinder was related to greater English reading growth in fourth grade. Students stronger in reading group, but with lower English oral proficiency, initially began behind their counterparts, but caught up with them later, meaning that the ability of the students to be able to read in their first language early on trumped their ability to speak oral English. So well-developed Spanish reading competence plays a greater role in English reading development than English oral proficiency. What about benefits for English as a home language students? Well, these students in dual language programs are found to develop native-like listening and reading skills. They have fluency, they have confidence, although depending how long they're in such programs, they may still make, and the quality of the program too, they may still make grammatical errors or have limitations in vocabulary or their idiomatic speech. And what about the benefits for society? Well, language speakers are extremely valuable resource. I wish everybody knew that in our country, and especially in our government today, right? There are an estimated 4.6 million students who come from, and this was 2014, who come to school already speaking a variety of home languages, this precious resource of language. Most commonly, of course, Spanish, followed by Vietnamese, Chinese, Arabic, and Hmong. So these languages are significant for our national and economic security and our well-being, right? Okay. All right, we also find that dual language education has its sociocultural advantages. In my mind, these programs are We could even look at them as social change incubators, where children can grow up in an environment where we put special emphasis on equity around language and culture, which is something that is so needed today, right? Um, these photographs I took from a very special book called The Little Book of Little Activists. And these are pictures that were taken at the Women's March in Washington, you know, the day after the inauguration of our current president. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And guess what? In dual language programs, we are teaching kids that they don't need to be silent, right? Okay. All right. So as I said earlier, the webinar is based on research that you can find in the Guiding Principles for Dual Language Education, 3rd edition. This publication is available in hard copy, but it is also available absolutely free online in PDF form. All you have to do is type in GP3 Cal, that's the affectionate name for Guiding Principles, GP3, and Cal, and you can get the PDF of the whole book. Okay, but today we're going to look at some of the strands, and I wanted to tell you what strands there are. There are 7 strands or 7 components of effective dual language education: program structure, curriculum, instruction, assessment and accountability, staff and professional development, staff quality, family and community support and resources. Now, we are not going to be able to look at all of these, and we're not going to be able to look at them, of course, all in depth. Cal also offers multi-day training on all of these. So we're going to do as much as we can today and give you a bit of a taste and some of the foundational information, as the webinar is called, right? Okay. All right, so now it's your turn again. I'd like to ask you to enter in the question box. Just name one of the 3 goals. There are 3 pillars, 3 goals of dual language education. Name one of them, at least one of them. Biliteracy, yes, yes. Bilingualism. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? Sociocultural competency. Yes, Kim, you got that one. I'm still waiting. There's another one. A brighter future. Love that one. Not one of the 3 principles, but absolutely true. There, we got it. High academic achievement. Who was that? First out of the box that I saw, Richard Harner. Thank you. High academic achievement. All righty, so I think we've got all 3. Let's look. I think our audience is very astute because we got the 3 of them: bilingualism and biliteracy, high academic achievement, and sociocultural competence, all 3. And unfortunately, sometimes that sociocultural competence is not as recognized, not as well implemented as the other facets, but we're not going to be able to be successful if we're not taking sociocultural competence into consideration as well, and high academic achievement for all students, all students. Okay. Okay, so if we're going to talk a little bit about the programs just generally, we've got research on high quality DL programs and what they have in the way of vision and goals that's so important. They have to have vision and goals, let's say that, right? Um, and they have to have a cohesive school-wide shared vision, set of goals that define expectations. This is for everybody. This is for teachers. This is for students. This is for families. This is for community. Commitment to achievement and high expectations, commitment to additive bilingualism. We're not talking about a subtractive model in which students are losing their first language. Students in dual language programs are adding languages, not taking them away. Effective leadership, very, very important that the leader knows the program and can fully support the program. And of course, ongoing planning. Effective schools are, this includes other schools, but also our dual language schools. They're warm and caring places for all of our students. They're safe places for all of our students, and they're places where all students are treated with justice and with fairness. And what is at the heart of the dual language program? Equity, where teachers and staff are committed to equity so that the teachers and staff understand the diverse needs of their students. They are culturally proficient. They are recognizing the importance and are using multi-ethnic curricular materials. They are integrating students' cultural values into the classroom. They're finding ways to celebrate and encourage the use of all home language varieties. For example, Spanglish is not a derogatory term. It is a language variety that should be valued, right? In addition to your more standard varieties of Spanish and English. We want to invite students to think critically and engage in learning activities. Transformational, social justice minded instruction. We also, and this is probably at the heart of it all, believe that all children can learn. Okay, so now we're going to go on, as I said, we're looking at some of the strands, some of the components of dual language education programs, and we're going to look at program structure, which is the first, in third edition, it's the very first strand, because this is the program design, this is the program model, and it is the scaffolding almost, right, for the rest of your program features. Okay, so we start out by saying, just some of the basics, right? And then we're going to go on to more research. So what's the difference in student enrollment between one-way and two-way dual language programs? Well, in one-way programs, most students come from the same home language background. In two-way programs, approximately equal numbers of students come from each of the two language backgrounds. The major types, well, there's two-way dual language programs, right? That's approximately half of the students are English learners and half of the students are partner language learners, right? Often, those are English speakers who are learning Spanish, French, Mandarin, etc. You also have one-way developmental programs. Those programs are those in which students are enrolled who are mainly partner language speakers. So you may have a school in which all of the students are from Spanish language backgrounds, and that would be considered more of a developmental program. Then you have one-way world language immersion programs, and those are students that are mainly partner language learners. And typically in the US, those students would be English at-home speakers, and they would be learning in learning a world language in their dual language program. So what are the possible language allocation scenarios for both one-way and two-way programs? Well, you can have 50% partner language instruction and 50% English for the duration of the program, from pre-K or K all the way through. You can also choose to have what has been called a 90-10 program, but now we can see variations of that. It may be 80-20, it may even be 70-30. But what you're doing is, beginning in the early years, you're starting out with much more partner language and then and less English, and over time the program transitions to 50-50. So that program, even if it transitions to 50-50 over time, say second, third, fourth grade, it is still called 90-10. It is still called 80-20. For those people who you're talking about your program with, they'll know how you started your program. Okay, so another aspect of a DL program is whether it's a strand or a whole school. A strand is a school within a school program. A whole school is the entire school, is the DL program. Now, there are also various teaching models. Okay, there's a side-by-side model where there are two classes of students and one teacher's teaching English and one teacher teaches the partner language, and the kids move, right? There's also the self-contained model. One teacher is bilingual and teaches both languages, but of course at different times. And then there are departmentalized models too. And you see these, of course, in secondary, but also sometimes in elementary, where teachers specialize in language use by a content area. So one teacher is only teaching Spanish and math. Another teacher is only teaching social studies and English or whatever. It's departmentalized. Okay, so that was a little bit of an overview about the types of programs, just sort of the ground, you know, foundational information. But what about the research? What does the research say? We have research, because people say, well, how long should the program be? How long should it be for the kids? Well, we know that there are higher student outcomes as far as your program goals if the students have sustained instruction for at least 6 years. And optimally longer. And we all are so happy to see that there are many, many more programs than there used to be that are continuing with solid programs through middle school and into high school. This is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay, so before we go on to this poll, what I'd really like to do is, I realized that I wanted to know a little bit more about you all as an audience. And guess what? I forgot. I forgot. Poor Igone is probably going, oh, she forgot the polls. I'd like to do a poll now, and Igone, if you can help me now, we're going to try to do a poll. We're going to stop for a second. We're going to have a little interlude here because we want to know where our audience is from, who they are, and what kind of roles they play. So Igone, can you go ahead and launch the first poll? And remember, we're going to show you the poll, but we want you to be voting first. Okay, we're collecting our responses. Okay, super interesting. Okay. I think we can close it because we're getting some definitive results here. And we can share. There we go. So everyone can see, and remember, you have to have you cannot be on full screen if you're going to be able to participate in the poll and see the poll results, I believe. So, hey, we've got our teachers and coaches. Yes. Who's more important, right? We've got 9% district school and school administrators, consultant researchers, and we've got some other folks joining us today. Terrific. Okay, let's hide the poll and let's see what else we can learn about you. Okay. All right. So in which setting do you work or mainly support? Okay, I think we can probably close that. We can share. All righty. Hey, no wonder we have so many smarty pants in the audience. 64% of the folks in our webinar, at least 75% who voted, are working in dual language programs. And then we have our English as a second language program folks, our general education folks, transitional. We welcome everyone because you can also see the advantages of using the student's first language, I think, through a kind of a webinar like this. And hopefully you're planning to open a dual language program in the future. All righty, I think we have one more poll to find out a little bit more about you. All right. What is the primary reason for your interest in this webinar today? Okay, I think we can close it now. We have a good sense of almost 80%. We have folks, the majority want to improve their program as it is, and that's what this is about too. They want to grow their understanding of many of you, of the program generally. What is it about? And 14% are developing, yes, rah, rah, rah. And 4% of you are contemplating too. Okay, wonderful. Okay, we can hide that. Thanks so much, Igone, for helping. You did a lot better than I did for you last week. Okay, all right. Is it closed now? Let me see the audience view. Okay.
Yes, I did close it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so let's continue to a bit more of the research here. Okay. Actually, we have another poll about the research. Okay, so what is the most effective partner language allocation model to ensure bilingualism and biliteracy? This is over the course of the entire program. So is it less than 50% partner language throughout the program or more than 50% to be most effective? Okay, so Igone, you can launch that poll too. Okay, I think we can go ahead and show the results. Okay, so as you can see, actually the correct answer is more than 50% partner language, because you know, we are looking at uh, developing a language that can be seen as a minority language, sometimes called a minoritized language. You want to get that language supported to the degree possible. So you want, even in a program, you want to be sure that you have at least 50% of the instruction in the partner language at the beginning and throughout. Of course, in a 90-10 model, you know, that's a foregone conclusion. 50-50, you're having equal parts. But even in the 90-10, Igone and I visit programs, and oh my goodness, you know, it's not a true dual language program, is not a transitional bilingual program. So you are maintaining 50% in English and the partner language over time for the duration of the program. If you really want bilingual, biliterate students who are able to achieve high academic achievement in both languages. Okay, so we can hide that. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, so we're looking at the next screen. As I said, minimum of 50% partner language throughout the duration of the program. Minimum of 10% initial English may be important for English language development for students learning English in two-way programs. I've seen in some locations around the country where the students are not interacting very much at all in English outside of school. And for them, they need to be growing their oral English to start with. So a little bit of oral English is a very good thing, tied with reading and writing authentic kinds of instruction, right? May be the case. So we need to be careful also at this point, probably to say there's no one right way to do this. Depends on your community, on the specific needs of your community. But there's some generalities from the research that we need to look at. Okay, so content instruction in English should increase to about 50% by later elementary, as I said. Okay. Okay. So greater amounts of instruction through English are not necessarily associated with higher levels of proficiency in English or higher reading or math in English for English learners, okay? If they're getting that, as we said multiple times here already, we know that the transfers, if they have these abilities in the first language, it transfers to the second. So this is true for levels of English language proficiency, listening, speaking, reading, writing. It's true for reclassification rates out of English learner status. And it's about also reading achievement as measured in English. Findings have been observed as early as preschool. So what about the amount of instruction in each language? Well, there actually isn't research here. But there is kind of an extrapolation from the research about what is going to be best, okay? Students need to practice both languages every day, right, to optimize language development. And research has looked at language and memory and found that there are two types of learning. Massed, which means you have a longer session and it's spaced further apart, or you have distributed learning, and that means that it's spaced, it's daily, okay? Now, extensive research shows that distributed or spaced, right, is more effective for learning than masked. So that means that although there's no research, it's really important, especially for young learners, to have daily use of the second language if they are going to develop that second language. And that's so important since content is taught through that language. So, okay. All right, in 90-10 programs, here's an opportunity for you to tell us what you think. In 90-10 programs, in which language do students receive initial literacy instruction? Is it in the U.S. context, of course, okay? Is it in the partner language like Spanish, French, Mandarin, etc., or is it in English here in our U.S. programs? So we're going to launch that again. Igone? Okay, I think you can now see the results. And 76% said partner language and 24% English. And actually, the answer is the partner language. Because, let me just hide this so I can see better. Yes, in a 90-10 program, what you're doing is, in the English context here, you for two reasons, you want literacy instruction to be in the partner language. For the English learners, or the English learners who come from those language groups, they're able to learn in their first language, the one that they have been learning orally since they were born. So they can put literacy to that, right? For the English speakers, there is so much English everywhere that you want to counteract all that English in society and often in their homes by putting that emphasis on literacy and oral language development in the partner language from the start. And research has shown that that's not at all detrimental to their education. As we've seen earlier in the research, those students do just as well over time and even better than their counterparts when they learn from the earliest years, when they learn in a dual language program. Okay. Of course, one-way world language programs have the choice of doing 50-50. Some of the strongest programs for that type of program is often 90-10. Okay. All right. In 90-10 programs, students should receive, here I'm, oops, sorry. Oops. Should be receive the bulk of their literacy instruction in the partner language. Okay, Ls who receive considerable native language literacy eventually score much higher on literacy tests in English and in their native language. Then students have been provided literacy instruction largely or entirely in English. Okay, I think we've kind of said that several times now. Lots of research on that. Okay, so for 90-10 programs, in which students are receiving almost all their instruction through the partner language, as I mentioned, native speakers of the majority language, like English in the United States, are not at risk of the development of the two languages. A lot of parents get really worried, but they really don't have anything to worry about. By third or fourth grade, these students usually score at least as high as native English speakers from monolingual classrooms on standardized tests of reading achievement. This also includes low and middle income African American students in French immersion programs and in dual language programs. All right. True or false? We have another poll. In 50/50 programs, students who receive initial literacy instruction in both languages, meaning which is also known as simultaneous literacy instruction, become confused. Is that true or false? Okay, I think we can close the poll. Okay, so 86% said false, 14% said true, and whoops, the answer is false. The answer is false, yes. And let me share some research about that. Okay. Okay, so first let's talk about successive and simultaneous instruction. And 50/50 successive literacy, what does that mean? That's when reading is taught first in the partner language and then later in English. Could even be vice versa. Whereas at 50/50 simultaneous literacy, reading is taught in both languages from kindergarten, right? So success is successive, you're doing one first and then the other. Simultaneous, you're teaching literacy in tandem. So what did Lindholm Leary's research find? English learners from similar socioeconomic backgrounds scored about the same regardless of program type on norm reference standardized assessment tests in reading in English by grade 5. By grade 7, students from different models scored similarly at grade level in reading achievement assessed in English. Reading achievement in Spanish, however, was higher in the 90-10 program than in the 50/50 program. Now, Escamilla and her fellow researchers also did a study, and they compared literacy outcomes for third grade English learners in two 50/50 programs. One was using successive literacy program, which was more of a transitional model, and one was using simultaneous their literacy squared, which is a simultaneous literacy model. And they found that the Spanish and English reading and writing outcomes were significantly higher in the simultaneous paired literacy than in the successive model. And the results indicated that there was no doubt people had been questioning whether children can learn literacy in tandem like that, and there was no question the children were not confused by instruction in the two languages. In fact, from what we know now, it's an advantage for the students to develop this meta-linguistic awareness and learning how the two languages, as they're learning them, are the same and different. Okay. We can also look in a different direction here and look at what the best classroom composition is in two-way programs. Of course, you'd like to have 50/50 English and partner language speakers. For those of you who are abroad, you know, English, we're talking about the majority language versus the minority, often called the minority language, right? There should be no more than 2/3 speakers of one language to 1/3 speakers. Otherwise, you don't have a dual language program, two-way dual language program anymore. Now, in our observations, often what we see is if you're going to err on the side of anything, you have more partner language speakers than you have English speakers. Because otherwise, you get too many, even 2/3 English versus 1/3 partner is going to, in my experience, put that program at jeopardy, unless you have a very highly evolved culture and system of equity. English can all too often take over. Okay, so here we have our teachers who are planning their using their curriculum. And that's what we're turning to next. We're going to turn to the strand of curriculum. So I'd like you to enter in the question box now. Just write a word or a phrase that comes to mind when you hear effective DL curriculum, effective dual language curriculum. What word or phrase comes to mind when you hear those words? Equity. I'm hearing equity. I'm hearing dynamic. Intentional from Lauren. Intentional collaboration. Engaging. Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. That's the word I wanted to hear. Wonderful. Creative. High level of education in both languages, Laura Price. Thank you. Collaboration and understanding, effective bridging, transfer, teamwork. Estela, thank you, teamwork. Planning and collaborating with clear objectives. Dolores, thank you. Vertical alignment, Kevin. Balance, alignment. Terrific, terrific. And a lot about teamwork and collab. Differentiation. Wanted to hear that. Okay, interactive. Thank you. Sustainable, using your tech resources. And interaction between students. Thank you, Lucia. Diverse assessment tools. No cookie cutter teaching, said Anna Miller. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, multicultural, diverse learning, culturally relevant. Thank you, Lisette. Thank you, Lisette Rosales. Thank you. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead to, I'm gonna hide that. And, okay, so what does the research say about successful curriculum? Well, we have successful schools, of course, clearly aligned with standards and assessments, academically challenging in both languages, not just in one, right? Conducive to higher order thinking in both languages. It's assets-based. We're not talking about remedial. There's a high degree of integration of language and content instruction. We need, as teachers, we're learning how to scaffold and shelter so that the students learn the content and develop their language at the same time. So preferably also we're using our CalSciUp methods, right? We're using a thematic cross-disciplinary. That's going to help us to integrate if we're using common themes. Project-based, let's put this into action, what we're learning. The National Academy said cross-disciplinary endeavors in planning and integrating instruction were critical in supporting language and literacy development. Clear vertical and horizontal. Some of you were saying that to be successful. And articulation involves these vital processes. We're linking the content and language across languages. We're articulating content and language across grade levels. And teachers are engaged in curriculum development together. Otherwise, it becomes piecemeal. An independent teacher, one teacher doing this, one teacher doing that, is not going to be as effective. Programs also promote socio-emotional learning. Those programs have a significant impact on student success. Kids need to feel proud of themselves and their language and their identity, and then they will learn better. I mean, even Krashen said that, right? With his theories that have been in have been around for a while. Um, dual language programs, they need opportunities for students to develop positive attitudes about themselves and others, cultural knowledge of themselves and others in a non-stereotypical way, though, ethnic, linguistic, cultural, and esteem language and cultures, all varieties too. There is no such thing as a bad form of language. There's no such thing as a bad dialect. There's not one variety that is better than the others, right? And that's what kids need to learn. At the same time, they learn, like, oh, this is the Spanish and the English, or the French, or the Mandarin that I'm going to use in school and at the university, right? And there's another variety that's near and dear to me because it's the language of my family, right? Okay, dual language programs, also the ones that are successful, have books in many genres, culturally authentic literature, variety of other materials in both languages, and they're equal. Otherwise, that's not equity, right? And effective digital integration of technology, and in both languages, as one of our friends said in the question box. Okay, so of course we could have gone into that in more depth, but this is just a foundations, very brief webinar. So we're going to continue with instruction. And I want you to start out by doing a little brainstorming. What is one word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear effective instruction? Effective instruction in dual language programs. There's overlap with curriculum. I will give that to you, but let's see what you say. Let's see, questions. Students make connections, consistency. Let's see, bridging, scaffolding, real understanding, meta-linguistic awareness, organized, multiple perspectives. I love it. Transformational. Let's see. Adaptations for understanding using cognates. It's rigorous. It's fun. Yes, Esther. Yes. And also serious too, but it's fun. Relevant. 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 Thank you, Justine. Building background knowledge, it must be, or eliciting, not only building, right? Kids don't come as blank slates either. I know that's not what you meant, but we are eliciting background and sometimes building, right? Building on speaking and oracy. Leslie, thank you. Thinking of funds of knowledge. We're including the student voice. We're building change. Thank you, Laura. We're providing anchors and anchor charts. Thank you, Clara. Modeling. We're modeling. Yes, 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 yes. And we're using first language, right? As a scaffold. We're using the language that's the strength as a scaffold, right? Okay. Okay. All righty. All right. Okay. So Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to unplug that and go back here. Okay, so let's look at what the research says. What are important aspects of language and literacy development? Ensuring comprehension. Okay, we've got to be using our methods so kids understand. We're providing sheltered instruction, scaffolded instruction. We're providing like PSYOP, like Cal PSYOP. Oh, shameless plug. Providing stimulating academic language input, stimulating. So many of you said that. We're providing focused second language instruction designed to teach a particular aspect of the language, more effective than mere exposure. You know, and so if we are talking about Spanish English programs, we do know right early on that what a wonderful thing it is that the Spanish orthography is so transparent, unlike English, which is so opaque. That helps kids break the code in both languages, right? But just wait, because Spanish gets us back in a way, we could say, because the verb system later on is so much more complex than English. And we are going to have to teach those particular aspects of language and not just provide mere exposure over the long haul, especially when it comes to something like the verbs, right? We're going to promote highly developed oral language skills by providing structured and unstructured opportunities. In the two-way programs, we have our language models. That is fantastic. They can serve as language models for each other. So we have to give them opportunities for extended discourse. We set that up. We provide it structured. Other times it's unstructured. But the kids need to be talking, right? Not just the teacher, right? Okay, now there's been a shift in instruction, right? What has that shift been in dual language and in dual language programs? Well, it's been a shift away from separation, absolute separation of language, to premeditated opportunities for students to be able to notice the similarities and differences between the languages, to use the stronger language as a scaffold sometimes. We are moved away from, you know, you can never, ever use that language in this classroom, right? And we know that cross-language transfer is an important premise for this, because we know that content learned through one language is also available in the other languages spoken by the learner. And more recently, research has shown that bilinguals activate both languages in parallel when they process or produce language. For bilinguals, activation of knowledge of language is automatic. Emergent bilinguals must use more cognitive resources, actually. They have an advantage cognitively, right? We said that, to manage that activation of the irrelevant language, right? They've got to filter that out. So they do this by inhibiting the use of the irrelevant language while they process information related to the relevant. This means that our kids are mental jugglers, that anybody who's bilingual is a mental juggler, right? And that has its advantages, and we want to take advantage of it. So rather than keeping languages absolutely separate, we're providing opportunities for students to make cross-language and sociocultural connections. Why? Well, we're demonstrating a holistic approach. Being bilingual is good. It's a good thing. And some of us are bilingual and biliterate. And you should model that. And you should affirm your identity of being bilingual. There's nothing wrong. We're not squelching that part of who you are, right? It's supporting students as they develop their identities as an emergent bilingual, as a global citizen. And we're encouraging to use their language as a resource. Don't hide don't hide that tool that you have, right? Don't let people tell you you cannot use that precious tool that you have, right? Okay. Now, what's happening, what happens, and this is Susan Ballinger's work, who you also might want to look into, but she tells us, based on her research, that a subtractive learning environment is created when the learners are encouraged to draw on the majority language during minority, or we could say minoritized, right, language instruction. And that replicates the existing societal imbalances. The majority language should only play a minor role, if any, during instructional time allocated to the minority immersion language, right? Or the majority language begins to infiltrate and take over, right? So we want to avoid that. And we want to avoid at all costs concurrent translation. That's a premise of good instruction, right? Um, but that's different from that's different from talking about the use of the comparisons and the scaffolding is different than concurrent translation. And we want to maintain a separation in ways that serve to avoid the societal language imbalance. There's actually a double standard because, again, you know, most of the programs that I serve are English-Spanish, so I use that, but it applies to other programs as well, that we could be saying that it's a double standard because in your Spanish instruction, please don't use much English unless it's in a premeditated way, but vice versa. In your English instruction, it is less hazardous to use for kids to be able to use that first language. Okay. All right. So, and on that note, let's look at family and community. Okay. All right. So, just a few things about family and community. Enter in the question box a word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear the words dual language program and families. Okay, let's see. All right, background knowledge, community, culture, buy-in, open communication, sensitivity. Everybody is involved in their kids' education. Open-minded. Cultural awareness and sensitivity, equitable. Foster connection, inclusiveness, understanding. Unity, I love it. I miss the person who said that. It's going too fast. Diversity, global perspectives, possibilities. I love these words. Differentiation, emotional health and well-being, empathy, cultural celebrations coming together, cultural competence, respect in capital letters. Rocio, thank you. Oh, I love it. And teamwork. Teamwork, connections, beliefs. Believe, I will believe. Yes. Keeping tradition, embracing new culture. Banks of knowledge that we recognize. Trust, relationships. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. All right, so let's see what we have in the way of our research. Okay, so what Guadalupe Valdez notes, and by the way, in the webinar handout that I give you, you are going to have the, you will have the references too. And they are in, the references are also in the Guiding Principles book. They're all there. I took this from there. Okay, so Valdez, what does she say? Well, when schools employ cultural assimilation approaches, right, or use culturally inappropriate practices in the name of what they're saying is parent involvement program. Well, sometimes these are well-intentioned, but often it's a one-way information they provide that reflects an assumption that parents come as blank slates and that they must leave their own cultural norms at the door and assume new cultural ways of parenting that at time conflicts with their own, right? And we don't want to do that. We're talking about respect. We're talking about understanding. We're about forging relationships. We're not telling you that you need to make yourself in our image, right? And as educators, we have the opportunity to do something different, to create meaningful partnerships that focus on children, their education, and that disturb the unequal power relations between home, school, and community. These schools are our social change incubators, right? That's what I like to call them, because we can change this. We can change this in dual language. Okay. Also, barriers that sometimes come in the form of staff attitudes, unfortunately, that may reflect the often, unfortunately, commonly held beliefs that low-income and ethnic minority and language minority families, minoritized families, don't really care about the education of their children. And that is not the case. Research has demonstrated time and again that all families care about their children and want them to succeed in school, understand the importance of school, and support their children's school experience. In this research, most parents of students at all grade levels, whether they were children of English learners or native English speakers, were very satisfied with dual language program and would recommend it to others. Parent attitudes on the part of speakers of Spanish, Cantonese, Mandarin are very favorable towards bilingualism. And parents agree that it's important that your children receive instruction in their native language. Most parents of native English speakers and English learners also perceive that studying the partner language will be an asset for their children, for careers, for their place in the world, and for their intellectual benefits. So what are strategies for engaging families? Well, number one, strength-based. This is in a deficit-based perspective that we take with families. That parents understand that we understand that all families have many strengths, many strengths. They don't have to be the same. They don't have to be the same to be valuable, right? We provide a welcoming environment. We're hiring bilingual staff in the front office. That's the advantage of dual language schools, isn't it? Because there's so many people who are bilingual in the school. We organize adult education programs, including English language classes and partner language classes. Let the families learn the partner language. Give parents guidance on how to navigate the school system, showing respect for our families, translating and providing information, which is what we do in our dual language. Be flexible in scheduling school meetings, of course, helping families support their children's development at home, using technology, and boy, are we learning that ever. Are we learning about the inequalities in our society around the access to technology? Let this be a lesson forever, forever, for all of us, for society, and for our schools. Okay, so finally, we're just going to talk about support and resources. And I want you to tell me, how important is the support of your Board of Education and your central office administration to the development of your dual language program? Poll, we're going to have a poll here. We probably do. I opened up the wrong one. Hold on. Okay, collecting responses, and I think we can show them. Oh, whoa. Well, we can wait, I guess, whatever. About half the people voted. Okay, I think we can close it since in the essence of time. And we'll share it. Okay, so as you see, thankfully, most of you said exceptionally important or very important. It really is super important that you have the support of your Board of Education. That is not to say that we have programs who, despite not having that kind of support, have succeeded and now have their support. But it is very, very important that that programs are not left to their own devices to have to find everything themselves, and instead to be able to have the community, the political, the will behind your program, and central office administration behind you, so that you have HR finding the quality staff, helping you with in finding the teachers that you need for your program, that you have professional development support for in-service and pre-service teachers, that you have the funds to have equitable resources, that there's a strategic plan that the entire school system endorses and is behind. This is very, very, very important. And you'll be much more successful if you have this kind of support, right? Okay, all righty. So that was, we went through, what, 5 of the 7 strands. So there's more, but what can I say? We didn't have time, but you know, sometime in the future, maybe we'll be able to see and speak with you again. So I'm going to need to ask either Igone or Maria if we have any questions now that you want to ask in the few minutes that we have. And then we'll do a bit of housekeeping, and we'll be on our way this afternoon.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to go, Maria, or should I go?
I'll ask the first question. Okay. Yes, Maria has been waiting for this question for a while now. If you have a two-way and a one-way program in the same building, what should be the criteria to place the students in the one-way program?
Okay, if you have a one-way program, and then you also have a two-way program in the same building, what should be the criteria for putting children in a one-way program? You know, I wouldn't dare to answer that right now. Oops, I'm not going to avoid it here. But I want Maria to take my email address and send that to me, because it really depends on so many other factors about the community that I would not be able to just right off the top of my head say this is the best way to go. So Maria, please email me and or Igone, and we will respond. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Another question.
Okay, so there's a question about yeah, this is Ivana. Thank you, Lisa. There's a question about the motivations for 50-50 versus 90-10, the two main models.
Okay, the motivation? The motivation? What do you think that means, Igone, the motivation for?
Well, the reasoning behind it, you know, why one versus the other, is there one that's better? I mean, that's a question that's often asked.
Right. Okay, yes. So again, and we do say this in our training, is that there is not one best model. You really have to look at your community of students and decide what is best for them. So, you know, a 50-50 program, you're thinking about, you know, is it a one-way? Is it a two-way? And what makes sense as far as, are we going to teach simultaneous literacy in this program? How's that going to work out? If we do a 90-10 and we have simultaneous literacy, we know that it's going to be primarily in the partner language to begin with, but how are we going to introduce some aspects of English? The research is showing that the students who have more, especially the English learners who have more of the first language early on, actually do better over time. When you have English only kids in your language immersion kind of programs, I mean, they often do better with a 90-10 because they're getting more of that focused language other than English in school, and that opportunity is limited elsewhere. So it depends. It really depends on your community. Okay. Igone, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, there is not a lot of robust research on it, but the studies that are out there, they do show that when it comes to partner language outcomes, this would be the Spanish, Mandarin, Vietnamese, whichever, you know, is not the English side of things, but the other language, the partner language, that they, kids in 90-10 programs on average, they usually end up with, you know, higher proficiency levels in the partner language, and that over time, there's no difference in their English outcomes. So, but again, I mean, I totally agree with what Lisa was saying when it comes to, you know, what type of program. You really have to look at your community, what the community endorses. You know, if there's no buy-in from the different stakeholders, then, you know, it's probably not going to be a successful program. So it is tricky, and you do have to look at, you know, what makes sense.
Yes, you need to look at your community. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have time for maybe one more question?
What time is it? Yes, sure. One more question, and then we're going to encourage you to jot down our emails. And if you have burning questions that we have not gotten to, feel free to email us. Many of the questions will also be answered probably in the guiding principles. So download that. Also download the guiding principles book. Okay. All right. One more question.
So we do have one question, and it was with a couple of definitions. So one question is partner language the same as target language?
No, that's a very good question. Okay. So partner language refers to the language that of the program, you know, that is not English. All right. It's a language, it's a program language. Partner language. Target language is the language that you're using in the classroom at that moment for instruction. Okay? I hope that answers it, but that was an easier one. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So
do you, okay, there's no more questions. Are we done then?
Yes, we better only because I want to respect people's time. And we have to close up. And I see, even in the question box, I see myself a number of questions, and they're all very good questions. They are. Please email us. And even, you know, this doesn't have to be the end. You know, Cal does come to your districts. Cal provides training And we would be very happy to come to your districts or to your schools and provide this kind of training. And then we will be able to answer questions for your community and not try to answer questions that are impossible really sometimes to answer, because you have to look at who are the kids, who are the families that you are serving in your school.